It only took about 4 months, but Battlefield 2042 finally has a more proper scoreboard. Yeah, but it's not all happy news still. People are still concerned about the rate at which progression is happening when it comes to Battlefield 2042's technical issues and content additions. We'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's take a look at the player numbers of Battlefield 2042, which has gone up a little bit because of recent updates like the addition of a scoreboard, but the numbers are still pretty meager. Numbers were sitting at below the 2,000 mark, and now it's kind of rising to the 2,500 area, but that's not a significant boost. And while this update isn't so substantial that maybe it would inspire people to come back to this game, it's not like a new map or, just a major content update or anything like that. Still, it's just not encouraging to see numbers like this mere months after the game's launch. And still, Battlefield 5 is performing a lot better with numbers, 24-hour peaks reaching closer to 20,000. Battlefield 1 is still doing higher numbers than Battlefield 2042. And Battlefield 4 numbers are comparable, and we're talking about an almost decade-old game. But we have been seeing some updates like this blog post that admits that maps were not well handled for 2042, and they detailed areas where they want to fix both existing maps and also fix for upcoming new maps. Basically, keep all of these things in mind for new map additions. And they acknowledge that traversal, intensity, line of sight, paths, and cover are 5 of the major issues with how maps are currently designed. They provided examples of improvements that they're planning across current maps. So here's one example. And yeah, there is a good amount of detail here. And at the very least, it does seem like they're acknowledging the issues and are being more communicative about that aspect. And everything detailed here, people seem a little more encouraged by, because it is actually highlighting what's wrong with the maps, and it finally feels like they've acknowledged their some of their biggest mistakes with this game. As for when can we expect these planned improvements to be live in game, currently planning to deliver updates specifically to Kaleidoscope during Season 1. So this is where people get a little concerned. We're only getting an update to an existing map during Season 1, which is already delayed from March to May. It just feels like the content rollout and the update rollout is so slow that there seems to be no way that this game's actually going to be salvaged at the rate it's going. Players are going to keep leaving. They're going to keep finding new games to spend their time on that are better for your time. And it's just not good news for the longevity of Battlefield 2042. And then what do these identified improvement areas mean for the future of map design? The biggest action point for ourselves is that bigger maps doesn't necessarily mean more freedom and play style, so they're going to make sure that future maps are smaller in scale and better balanced. And they detailed here how they want to update maps to be more rectangular rather than square, so that people don't circle around the map. Rather, there's a clear, you got to go forward with that rectangular shape and stuff like that. So that's that on the map department. But when people saw this update, we're seeing takes like the one on Reddit here really torn on this. On one hand, this is by far the best communication they've given us, both in terms of language used and the actual content. They identified most of the common issues and discussed viable solutions or alternatives. On the other hand, like most of this game, all these are issues that should have been identified and addressed prior to launch or very quickly afterwards, and we have been given little reason to believe they'll be able to fix these issues either in a reasonable time frame or to a high standard. The fact that no changes will be coming till Season 1 and only for one map gives reason for concern, especially given all past experiences with this title. However, if nothing else, excellent shift in communication style at least. So yeah, that's something, but execution is another thing, and execution right now is so freaking slow that it doesn't feel like it'll be enough to revitalize a dying game. And others noted similar sentiments. Some quick math: if Kaleidoscope is going to take 3 to 5 months to rework and there are 7 maps, at best, it will take DICE 21 months to finish fixing the launch maps. And then here we have another Reddit user who highlighted a post that expresses similar sentiments. Still digesting the blog post yesterday. It's pretty rough getting such a slow information trickle from DICE right now. It's like, yes, these are undeniably positive developments, but these are slow moving positive developments, not anywhere near fast enough for this game to be viable in the long term, especially with how fast it's hemorrhaging players. I was expecting like maybe 4 maps worth of overhauls and ideas launching pre-season 1, but seeing only Kaleidoscope and then knowing that it's launching by itself at some point during season 1 is difficult to stomach, to put it lightly. And these are valid concerns, especially with EA's track record of saying, oh, we're totally committed to the long-term future of this game that we launched broken and rushed, only for that to be abandoned not too long down the line. And that finally brings us to update 3.3, a more recent update that added the scoreboard. And this was something that people knew about that was coming. A couple days ago, somebody posted, it's relieving but still sad. Update 3.3 will introduce a refreshed scoreboard, incorporating your feedback to include deaths and a team split. And then the meme here is they're fixing the scoreboard. Yes, you're getting this hyped for a scoreboard. Yeah, this is a big deal for Battlefield 2042 because it waited so long to finally add a feature that should have been there at launch, or they didn't plan for the feature to be there, but after all the backlash, they were forced to essentially, I guess, rebuild the scoreboard from the ground up, which took up a lot of time. And the fact that there is so much buzz around just this game finally getting a scoreboard really highlights the sad state of affairs. Now here's the blog post detailing update 3.3. With the introduction of the updated scoreboard functionality, we'd once again like to express our commitment to listening to your feedback and improving your in-game experience with each update. Here's what the scoreboard looks like. You can get a better look here, and you can see it shows a bunch of information about the match, as well as, you know, kill death ratio, a bunch of information about individual players. So definitely a big step in the right direction. But the addition of something so basic isn't necessarily something that I'm going to pat EA and DICE for. This goes doubly true when the scoreboard feature is still kind of incomplete, actually. Next update is presently scheduled to arrive in early April. It'll include a larger set of changes and fixes, as well as the introduction of voice over IP. Voice chat is still not in the game. It'll introduce voice chat functionality for squads. And then here's the bit showing that the scoreboard feature is still incomplete. The refreshed scoreboard being available during end of round. Right now you can only see the scoreboard in match, but once the match ends and you're at the end of round section, you cannot bring up the scoreboard and look at the end results of everything. So that's currently an annoyance and inconvenience that will be updated later. But it's just, again, the level of how slow the rollout has been for fixing just the most basic things, or adding the most basic things before being able to actually get to substantial content additions. Just how long it's all taking is not particularly encouraging. And beyond the fact that the scoreboard update is still somewhat incomplete, people have some qualms with its implementation. There's some nitpicking that's happening among the community. The new scoring system doesn't factor in everything a player can do, such as heal allies, repair vehicles, or shoot enemies from very far away for a distance bonus. The scoreboard is still somewhat feature incomplete, despite it taking 4 months after the game's launch for it to be developed, which is a long time for, again, a basic feature that should be in a tactical first-person shooter like Battlefield. The scoreboard only counts kills, assists, revives, and flag captures, which is disappointing to some players. It's also slightly confusing that kills are skulls and deaths are X's in terms of symbols, which is more of a UI criticism. It was also discouraging for people that the patch notes for update 3.3 were so barren, just detailing the new scoreboard and then a couple of minor fixes here and there, but nothing in terms of really exciting things for the roadmap of this game, if there even is one at this point for this title, that seems to still be playing catch up to the most basic fixes and feature additions, which is why across social media and forums you'll find that sentiments are still relatively negative. So here's a post highlighting the new scoreboard, but comments will include stuff like, still can't believe it took this long to get this. We still can't use voice chat or switch squad, so teamwork is still lacking. This is just such a small step in the right direction for the amount of time that has already passed. And then scrolling further down, other top comments include, imagine waiting 6 months for an updated scoreboard. And then here is one more. I just hope DICE doesn't make a big thing out of this. It will become a meme of shame if they celebrate that they added a scoreboard into a AAA game 6 months after release. And beyond just the scoreboard, there is discussion about update 3.3 as a whole, and people have expressed their general disappointment at this update, stating things like, we could put the world's skinniest man on a diet and after 4 weeks, he'd still have more meat on him than these patch notes. This is one of the top comments. Basically, that's it. After all these months, this is all you have to give us, an update on a refreshed scoreboard, and except one new map that's kind of getting updated in a season 1 that's already been delayed. Just not the most encouraging of updates. I may be accused of being ungrateful, but seriously, that's it. It's taken months for this, and it's just a freaking scoreboard with some minor bug fixes, etc. General sentiments are similar to this across the board. Hold on a second. Did we only get an updated scoreboard and a couple of bug fixes in the last 3+ months of patches? I'm not imagining this right. And unsurprisingly, the culmination to all of this is just a general distrust that Battlefield 2042, or the Battlefield franchise as a whole, has long legs anymore. People are just sort of accepting that Battlefield 2042 is dead, that it's over for this game, isn't it? People suggesting that even future games won't fare any better. Battlefield 2042 is the biggest AAA failure in modern gaming, but its successor will likely do even worse. I'd like to think that won't be the case because leadership has shifted when it comes to the Battlefield franchise, and Vince Zampala's taken over, and he's among the few good creative heads at EA from what I can tell, given that his output has been just really good lately when it comes to Respawn titles that have launched. But with EA and Battlefield, you never know. I totally understand the sentiment that there is no hope for the series, given that it's just been so many successive rough launches that at this point it's really hard to have any kind of faith in this series. Though obviously the hope is that the pessimism will be wrong. Beyond that, people are continuously highlighting how Battlefield 2042 servers are pretty much dead with not enough players, mostly bots in these huge matches that require 64 to 128 players. And there are some folks even highlighting the success of Elden Ring and noting how EA once insisted that players don't want single-player games anymore. And here we have Elden Ring with hundreds of thousands of players every day, still breaking records on Steam, becoming, I think, the 6th highest in terms of most concurrent peak players of all time. And meanwhile, Battlefield 2042, just mere months after launch, this live service, which EA claimed to be the future of gaming, is faring pretty badly because ultimately it doesn't matter whether something's single player or multiplayer. People will play something that's compelling and of high quality. Elden Ring is high quality. Battlefield 2042 is anything but. And speaking of Elden Ring, there's recently been a lot of discourse because some developers from Ubisoft and PlayStation decided to diss Elden Ring's success because they weren't satisfied with aspects of the game's UX. Well, the guy who kickstarted that conversation, he not only is a Ubisoft developer, but he also worked on Battlefield 2042's UX, and that's something that's been heavily criticized. And so you got Tom Henderson right here, who's been covering what's been going on behind the scenes with Battlefield 2042, reporting leaks from sources and the like. He said it's probably not a good idea to publicly slam Elden Ring when you were a UI lead on Battlefield 2042 of all games, whose UI is not great, and the rest of the game really isn't all that great either. So the irony and hypocrisy here is certainly not lost on people. But yeah, still people continue to kind of rally against what Battlefield 2042 stands for when it comes to the AAA gaming landscape. People are done being patient with EA and DICE when this has happened time and again, and it's worse than ever with 2042 and the addition of a scoreboard alongside a meager set of notes for the patch. Like, that's just not going to be enough to rekindle or revitalize this game. I mean, there's just such a long way to go, and I don't believe this game can pull a No Man's Sky style comeback. I guess we'll see what happens when Season 1 comes around, just how much they add to that update, and whether it'll be a compelling enough event that people will actually start slowly trickling back into the game. But I have my serious doubts. And this is what happens when you decide to think short-term profits instead of long-term viability. But this is EA we're talking about, so none of this is really all that surprising anymore. But that's just one man's take on the current situation surrounding Battlefield 2042 and some of its recent updates surrounding maps and, the implementation of a proper scoreboard that is still incomplete in its features. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of Battlefield 2042 and all of the updates we've gotten recently. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.